Before I get into the video, I just want to give a quick thanks to my good friend World Class Thrills on this idea. We were talking and he said that it would be a great idea to do this, so let's try it out. If this video doesn't get a lot of views, it's his fault. What is up, enthusiasts? It is Cedar Flags here, and welcome back to another one of my videos. So, we all know and love RMC. RMC is the company that is responsible for transforming 13 old wooden coasters and turning them into massive steel giants. Now, as we may know, these used to not be these massive steel roller coasters we know and love today. These used to be massive wooden coasters that some people may have liked, but most people wanted to tear down. And the park listened. These rides were torn down for the better. But were they? Today, I'm going to rank the Pre RMC wooden coasters. These are the coasters that, before RMC'd, were massive wooden coasters that ruled in their day. I'm going to rank them from worst to best, and see what overall was the best Pre RMC Woody. I am going to base this off of two factors. One, how the ride looks in general, the POV, the forces, all of that. And second, I'm going to look at the comments of all of the videos that these roller coasters are on, and see what the general fan likeness of it was. Did fans like this ride, and did they miss the ride once it was removed? Or were they happy to say bon voyage to these rides once they were torn down? This is Cedar Flags, and today, I will be ranking the Pre RMC Woodies. Coming at the dead last spot, we have Rattler at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. This was made by the RCCA, and that's basically everything I have to tell you about this ride. This ride is dead last for many reasons. One, people said it was unbearably rough. Second off, the ride looks extremely boring. It looks like it barely has any forces whatsoever, and most of this ride consists of extremely long and drawn out helixes that last forever and don't look like they go more than 20 miles an hour. Its replacement, though, is by far better. Iron Rattler was the second RMC iBox conversion to come out, and gets a lot of fanfare even to this day. Glad it replaced such a hated and loathed roller coaster. Coming in at the number 12 spot, we have Cyclone, otherwise known as Riverside Cyclone at Six Flags New England. This ride just looked miserable. It was rough, it was elevated off of the ground so it would be extremely slow, and at the same time, it would have very wonky and wacky transitions. Its replacement though, Wicked Cyclone, is known as one of the most forceful and beloved RMCs of the current day. This ride gets a lot of good fanfare, and I'm glad that it found a better place and is a much better ride than it used to be. At the number 11 spot, we have Medusa at Six Flags Mexico. While not looking as bad as 12 and 13, this ride has very similar traits. Most of the track is extremely high off the ground, so the ride doesn't have that many forces. The ride has weird transitions, and like I said, the ride is extremely rough. Its replacement though, Medusa Steel Coaster, looks much better, and is known for being one of the most underrated RMCs due to it being in an obscure location. But I feel like if this was located in the states where more enthusiasts could ride, it would be ranked much higher on people's lists. At the number 10 spot is Hurler at King's Dominion. Now, I got to ride the Carowinds version of this and it really wasn't that bad, but at the same time, I heard from many people that the Hurler at King's Dominion was much, much worse. They have very similar layouts, but I heard the King's Dominion version was nearly unbearably rough. That, and it also had a trim at the first drop, which I heard hit extremely hard and was painful at times. I haven't heard good things about this ride at all, not a single positive review just like the others. But its replacement Twisted Timbers, believe it or not, I freaking love this ride. Twisted Timbers is such an incredible ride, and I am so glad that this old Hurler roller coaster got a great replacement. Coming in at the number 9 spot, we have Georgia's Cyclone at Six Flags Over Georgia. This Din Corporation wooden coaster, which will not be the last Din on this list, was an insanely rough wooden coaster that was located at Over Georgia. This was a Cyclone model just like the Coney Island Cyclone and Viper at Great America, but like I said, this ride got a lot of negative reviews. Now, it wasn't the roughest, but some of the transitions made this ride extremely slow. This ride just generally wasn't loved, but I have heard from people that if you did sit in the back row, you would get some great ejector. But its replacement, Twisted Cyclone, definitely looks a lot better. This ride is full of ejector, and at the same time, is extremely fast-paced and extremely smooth. What an improvement. The number 8 spot will go to Mean Streak at Cedar Point. It was extremely bumpy, especially in the back rows. It had very slow transitions, and it just kept dragging. Now, the long duration might be a blessing to me, but a curse to others. This ride could feel like a 10-minute ride experience, honestly. It was very ugly, it was a big eyesore at the time, and before they removed it, this ride wouldn't get more than a 5-minute line. I am blessed to say that I got to ride this and its replacement Steel Vengeance, and I have to say, Steel Vengeance is definitely the superior pick. This is one of my favorite coasters, and let me just say, this ride just rocks. It's my number 1 right now as I'm recording this, and I have to say that is because of the insane amounts of airtime on this ride, and the variety it has with airtime. At the number 7 spot, we have Gwazi at Busch Gardens, Tampa. This GCI wooden coaster definitely looked like it had a great layout in the beginning, but due to bad upkeep throughout the years, it got extremely rough. And they said that the roughness was really the only thing that kept this ride from being great. In fact, if this ride was smooth, it could possibly be one of the best GCIs in the country. This ride closed in the mid-2010s to make way for Iron Gwazi. Ride not being open yet, this ride looks absolutely insane, and looks like to be one of the best roller coasters on the planet. But for right now, we just have to look and see. At number 6, we have the original Old Texas Giant, once again at Six Flags, but this time at Six Flags Over Texas. This was another Dinwoody, and many people call this the tinier version of Mean Streak. And while I definitely agree with that, this actually looked better. Why? Because it had a lot of good low-to-the-ground moments, including the finale, which had a few ejector airtime pops. This ride definitely looked pretty good for a Dinwoody, but its roughness and boring layout for the most part caused guests to not like this ride as much as they used to. And this was actually the very first RMC conversion. This ride closed in 2009, and in 2011, New Texas Giant opened, being the first RMC and causing ripples throughout the industry. We're going to White Cyclone at Nagashima Spaland in Japan, and this ride definitely had its fans. This was actually an Intamin original wooden coaster, and this thing honestly didn't look that bad. Yes, it did have a pretty bad rattle to it, and I feel like in some of the back rows it would be a pretty bad experience, but when it comes to a front row ride, it looked like it got some pretty good floater airtime, but for the most part, the ride was just a bunch of boring helixes, and its replacement Hakugi looks absolutely incredible. Looks like one of the best RMCs in the world. Even though that's an unpopular opinion, I do stand by it. This ride looks incredible and definitely had a great use of the old long helixes that the ride used to have. Making our way into the top 4, we have Walibi, Holland's one and only Robin Hood. This was an old school Vekoma wooden coaster. Yes, this was Vekoma. And I have to say that this ride's layout honestly looked pretty promising. It looked pretty fast-paced and had some pretty cool elements, but the roughness definitely took away from it. This ride definitely looked at least okay, but its replacement, like I said, of all the other replacements, was definitely a great choice on the park side. This was Untamed, the massive RMC conversion, and some people say this is the best RMC in the world. Now, I have not been overseas to ride this, but from what I've heard some incredible things about this ride. Its airtime moments, its inversions, everything about it, this might be one of the best RMCs out there when it comes to variety and layout. Starting off our top 3, we have Twisted Sisters at Kentucky Kingdom, otherwise known as Twisted Twins in its later years. This ride was a dueling CCI Mobius loop coaster and honestly looked pretty good in its heyday. Even though it wasn't as rough as the coasters I mentioned in the past, it definitely did have a bit of a bump. The ride closed before the park closed down actually, but when Ed Hart saved the park in the early 2010s, one of his first steps for saving the park was RMCing this old wooden coaster. They turned it into Storm Chaser, one of the most intense and aggressive coasters of modern times. While all of the other coasters I mentioned on this list were mainly positive when they got removed, these next two coasters actually got more backlash when they were removed. The number 2 spot is Roar at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. Now, hearing that this was the better Roar, I honestly have heard many great things about this ride. It had Timberliner trains, it had a pretty smooth track, even though it did have a few bumps, it was still one of the more smooth rides out there. Anyway though, we all know what happened, it got RMC'd and turned into Joker. To be honest, this is actually one of the least praised RMCs, and a lot of people I've talked to actually prefer Roar to this, which is surprising, but oh well. This ride still is definitely a great ride and gets more praise than Roar, but still, Roar still has its mourners. We have finally made it to the number 1 spot, and if you couldn't guess, it is Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This ride was one of the most iconic roller coasters of all time. It opened up as the tallest roller coaster in the world in the late 70s, and even though it had a lot of profiling and retracking throughout the years, this ride still got an insane amount of praise, an insane amount of love. There was actually a picket protest when this ride was being torn down. This ride was so beloved by historic coaster fans and new coaster enthusiasts alike. They praised it for its long and fun layout, as well as its floater airtime throughout the experience. It was an extremely long ride, and definitely provided a great layout to the park. They did remove this though and turn it into Twisted Colossus. One of the most beloved RMCs out there, this Mobius Loop dueling coaster is definitely a very high up ride. And to many people, this is still a very worthy replacement of what once was one of the most beloved and iconic coasters in the world. Anyway, this is Cedar Flags, and that was my video. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below, and let me know what you think about the RMC rankings. Maybe I could rank the RMCs, but let me know down in the comments below how this video was. We are so close to 8,000 subscribers, so if you haven't already, click that subscribe button. So, this is Cedar Flags, and I will see you all later.